Welcome to Bedcrime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like all things true crime, if you like it delivered in a peaceful, tranquil manner, if you like it clear and concise without drama, then I highly recommend you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please smash the like button. It's a free way you can help. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. Hello, my true crime comrades. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Bullhorn Betty's interview was so long that I am only now getting to part 3 of my synopsis of it. I will share what I find to be the key points, and I will cut out the pauses so that we can all save some precious time, but still get the info. And then there were the disagreements over Sebastian's underwear. Per Seth Rogers, Sebastian's biological father, Chris Proudfoot wasn't happy that he, Seth, allowed Sebastian to wear actual underwear at his house instead of those pull-ups.
So you got him wearing underwear at your house. Well, we don't have the accidents at my house that he seems to be having at your house. So why, again, am I going to have my son wearing a diaper at my house when he can get up and go use the bathroom and not have an accident?
Do you think Katie and Chris stressed him out? Do you think that's why he was having accidents?
They stressed me out. And I'm not a 15-year-old kid. I'm in law enforcement, and I'm literally at DDC with 65 inmates that are either murderers or in there for a long period of time about to go to prison. And those two stressed me out and worked them. So yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm sorry. This is just one of those.
Very interesting, right? He's having problems over at the Proudfoot's house, but he's okay at his father's house.
According to Chris, both of you guys spoke, what he's told the world is basically you guys speak regularly. Is that true, and how often?
About Sebastian, yes.
Yeah.
But obviously, he's feeding me a line every time I spoke to him. And my phone number's still the same. And I know he's probably watching, he's probably in chat. Hi, Chris. Off. You can call me. Sorry, that's been my key phrase, I guess. Right. But that's been my key phrase for a long time, way before my son went off to, play Houdini out of their house. Beat me up, Scotty. It's only a Chevy. But no parent should be going through this.
Okay, so the blanks you heard there, those were instances when Seth said effin' or use the B and the S together. I'm with Seth. I'm not buying the Houdini vanishing act by Sebastian. There's just too many red flags with Chris and Katie Proudfoot. CPS reports for me are impossible to ignore. Although some people seem to ignore them, I can't. Some people have said, Chris, you're such an honorable man. You're supporting Katie so well. And Katie, you're such a strong woman. I'm sorry, I can't ignore the CPS report. Those combined with the stories that neighbors allegedly shared make the Proudfoot home seem like a very scary place and a dangerous place for Sebastian. We also can't ignore Katie Proudfoot's childhood. I know she didn't want that information out, but it is out. Psychologists say that antisocial personalities often come out of traumatic childhood experiences with SA. People like Ted Bundy develop out of those very early experiences and that early trauma. I'm not saying that Katie Proudfoot is anywhere near a Ted Bundy. I'm pretty sure those early experiences have affected her in a very deep way, and I'm sure they may have led to some personality disorder issues. How could they not? But I'm going to say allegedly because nobody has diagnosed her. I'm just speculating. Listen to what Seth said about why he and Chris tended to be the ones discussing Sebastian instead of Seth speaking with Katie. But also realize that Seth has now said he feels that based on the CPS reports, that Chris was often handing him a bunch of BS when they talked about Sebastian.
How often did you speak with Katie before all of this? Was your primary contact Chris, or did you ever speak to Katie?
I spoke to Katie, but see, the animosity that's there between me and Katie wasn't really there when it was me and Chris.
So you just find it easier to work with Chris than you do to work with Katie?
Yeah.
Prior to this, right? Gotcha.
Correct.
So even though it's been many years since Seth and Katie were divorced, there was still some degree of animosity there. I just want to bring up that sometimes when parents do in their children, it is to inflict harm on the other parent. I'm not saying that's what happened here. It's just a possibility. Some people are saying that Katie filed divorce papers against Seth on February 26th of either 2016 or 2018. I can't remember which one. And Seth was asked, is that true? He said he needed to check. So far, I haven't heard if he's looked back at those papers. If he finds out that that's true, that is a coincidence that cannot be ignored. Remember, Sebastian supposedly went missing either late Sunday night, February 25th, or very early in the morning of Monday, February 26th. Now here's a very interesting part of the chat. This is how Seth explained the decision to have Sebastian move into his home full-time starting in the summer and have Katie be limited to, I think, every other weekend and perhaps holidays.
What was that conversation like?
Many discussions had been had before it was approached, but both Chris and Katie and everybody was like, he is a different child when he comes back from living with you. And because he's a different child, it's like I kept trying to tell them if they're having a problem with him, let me talk to him. Let me know what you'd like me to address so that I can speak to him. Me and Sebastian could, from an early age, me and Sebastian communicated. Before he could even speak, he would do grunts and sounds and stuff like that, point. And I know exactly what he wanted. And it upset some people in life, but it's like, it's not my fault. I know what my son needs. You know, our wavelengths were more in tune. I connected to my son. I mean, you kind of do that when you're, you know, deadbeat tired to the world, and you're sitting there feeding them a bottle going, I'm still awake, there's still milk in the bottle. You know, I've got pictures of where, you know, he literally crawling everywhere, and then he would just hit his limit, and he'd be out on the floor. And it's like, do I pick him up, wake him up, or do I just slide a pillow up underneath him and then put a blanket on him and, you know, try to get 20 or 30 minutes worth of sleep while he's passed out? And it's just one of those things. It's like...
So if that's true, it sounds like Seth had more of a bond with Sebastian when he was a baby, and that could be because he was the primary caretaker, from what I understand at some point, and Katie was the main breadwinner. But it could also be because perhaps Katie does not have the normal, I shouldn't say normal, what we expect as maternal instinct in a mother. Some women don't have that. You can have babies, but not really want those babies. I met a woman like that one time, and she was not living with her children. She was allowing their biological father to fully raise them, and she wasn't paying any child support either. She did not want to be a full-time mother. She came and saw them once in a while, and these kids were desperate for her attention and her time. They weren't mad at her, they just wanted time with her. Seth said that he felt it was very important for Sebastian to have structure. Take a listen.
I believe children are supposed to have a solid foundation to lean on as they grow up. And I believe I was that solid foundation. The structure that I had in the house. The court system literally at one point in time during the divorce told me that I was borderline abusive because I had, you know, shower time at 7 and bedtime at 8. It's like, how is that borderline abusive? It's routine. You know, it's school. You need to lay down. You need to have your hot shower, be clean, lay down clean in your bed. And whether you're asleep or not, but you need to be laying there so that you will go to sleep. Told that I was borderline abusive by a judge in California for having a set routine for my son. He was in school.
And that's what they tell you to do, is have a very, that's one thing that throughout this whole process that has been instilled in me from all the parents, is that a strict schedule is the best way for autistic children to survive, and to thrive.
And they didn't even have him diagnosed as autistic, but with the chromosomal deletion, it was simple to understand that it's not even for autistic children. It should be all children. All children need to have a routine, and it's a foundation, because then it's stability. They already know what's going to happen as the night progresses. No surprises. You got to go, you got to take a shower, you got to get to bed, so that you can get plenty of sleep, so you can wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, get ready for school. You need the sleep for your mind to recover and your body to recover, so that you can absorb the information that's being taught to you at school.
I completely agree with everything he just said there. That's the way I was raised, and I think it makes sense. Kids need sleep, and they need routine. Betty then dared to try to approach Katie's childhood, the essay that she allegedly suffered at the hands of her mother, but Seth did the right thing. He said he wasn't going to talk about that. I think for legal reasons, he can't really talk about that. And I think he was being honorable. That's Katie's story to share. When Betty then asked Seth if Katie would abuse Sebastian, this is how he responded.
Talking about essay, my son?
No, abuse your son. Just abuse him.
Mental abuse?
Physical, mental, verbal.
I mean, for my son to sit there and have told me while we were living in California that why does mama hate you so much? I wouldn't know, son. She's never said that to me. Oh, she said that on the phone to you. Well, no, she didn't. She'd already hung up before she said that. Things like that are mental abuse to a child that was called my mini. And whether she realizes it or not, every time she said something that was negative about me, pretty sure my son took it to heart, because he's my son.
I totally agree that parents should not disparage the other parent in front of the child. This seems to happen sometimes in contentious divorces or contentious relationships where the mother of the child and the father of the child have issues, and the person who ends up being hurt by all of that seems to be the child. And I've seen this from personal experience. I'm not going to go into it, but I know in at least one situation, the child was damaged by this. And the child's relationship with the parent who was disparaged was compromised and hurt. And that shit leaves permanent scars. Doomsday mom Lori Vallow apparently dissed on her deceased ex-husband, Joseph Ryan, in front of their child, Tylee Ryan. And Joe's sister witnessed this, and she also witnessed how it affected Tylee. Seth also said that he can't watch interviews of Chris and Katie Proudfoot because he can't stand watching them disparage Sebastian.
Talking about her interviews and stuff since this has gone on,
Yes.
I can't sit through any of her interviews. I cannot listen to her. She won't even say my son's name. And there's a reason why I say my son. My son has a name. His name is Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. He's my son. I'm looking for him. I'm asking everybody to help find my son. I don't hear her doing that. I don't see it. I don't hear her saying his name. I don't see her saying his name. I don't see that. Nothing would have been better for me than being able to put our differences aside, work together to find our son.
I hadn't noticed that Katie wasn't using Sebastian's name. I'm gonna go back now and look at that. That's pretty telling, because parents of missing kids who want to find those kids usually are screaming their names from the rooftops loud and clear and repetitively.
I'm not going to let some dirtbag run the show when it comes to finding my son. The only person that has an input on it would be his mom and me. We run the show to find our son. I don't care if you're married to her now or not. A united front is not me and the stepfather working to find my son. It's me, the mother, and her husband working to find our son. He needs to learn how to support his wife in a supportive role while she looks for her son. I don't see that. It's not my job to support her. It stopped being my job to support her when she filed for a divorce.
Seth then explained that photo from one of the vigils where he is leaning up against a truck and Chris Proudfoot seems to be hovering very close to him.
There was photos of Chris kind of being in your personal space, in my opinion. There were rumors at that time that he was screaming at you or raising his voice, or something about the whole GoFundMe situation. Do you have any comment on that?
You're speaking about I think that would have been less. We did the Light the Path. We did.
It was right before they were seen at a motorcycle shop.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Hey, he didn't raise his voice at me. He was asking to work together. This was before I spoke to Tony, and before I spoke to a dog person who has completely ghosted me, by the way. I don't care what her opinion is. She can't be looking for my son if she doesn't have his shoes and his clothes. They're at my house. Chris has already said that he's not giving her anything of Sebastian. So I'd like to know how she's got a scent to find my son. And you know my phone number. Give me a call. He wanted to work together.
So Seth dispels the rumor that Chris was shouting at him during that interaction. Somebody reported that they were shouting. That apparently is not true, according to Seth. Seth also threw a little shade there at the dog handler, Jules Valenti, I believe. He's saying that she sort of ghosted him, and he doesn't understand how she can be searching for Sebastian if she doesn't have any of his personal items. However, I did read that perhaps law enforcement may have handed over something of Sebastian's to her. I find that hard to believe that they would take some item of evidence out of their custody and hand it over to a dog handler at this point, after supposedly other certified canines have searched for Sebastian using articles of his clothing that he wore on Sunday, February 25th, when he was dining at the Texas Roadhouse with his mother. It is odd that Jules is not communicating with Seth, but maybe she doesn't trust anybody at this point. It's hard to know who's telling the truth and who you can trust. And maybe investigators have said to her, we're okay with you searching, but do not involve the parents and don't tell them anything about the searches that you're doing. Around the 1 hour and 44-minute mark, Bullhorn Betty asks Seth about the day that Sebastian went missing.
So I want to kind of bring us back to
Sebastian.
The day. Yeah. And I want to kind of start now picking your brain on trying to, and it's going to suck for you, and I know, and if you need to stop or slow down, just let me know. But I want you to kind of go back to the morning of February 26th when you listened to your voicemail message and you heard Chris on it. Was it Chris that was on the voicemail?
The text message.
Text message. And
I had a missed call and a text message from Christopher Proudfoot telling me to 911. So I called him.
And what was that conversation like?
Don't be angry or mad. Sebastian's missing. What?
Did you find the statement, don't be angry or mad, odd?
Yes and no. I mean, my son's missing. Distraught would have been a better word. Confused on why he's gone. Mad and angry now. With what I know, yeah. Mad and angry fits now. But then again, what I know now is everything that Chris knew beforehand.
That is a strange thing for Chris to say to Seth. Don't be mad or angry.
Did you get immediately concerned when you got that call that there was something seriously wrong? Did you just know immediately?
I left there and I was doing well above the speed limit trying to get to Katie's house to find out what's going on.
Looking back on that call you had with Chris, does anything now seem out of the ordinary or odd?
The lack of emotion, maybe?
When you got there, what did Katie personally tell you happened? Did you guys talk when you got to the house?
When I got there, I assessed the situation before I walked in. Law enforcement was everywhere, in and out the doors, so on and so forth. By the time I got there, the dog people were there and the drone people.
Seth ended that by saying, I was the last one to this stupid effed up party.
Arrived at the home outside of the craziness from law enforcement. What was the behavior of the people, Katie and other people that were there?
When I walked in, Katie said something to me, and then shoved her phone in my face. There was a picture of Sebastian, the one that you see him with his optimism shirt on. Kind of confused me on why she's shoving a picture of Sebastian in my face. I know what my son looks like.
Do you know why she did that?
No, still don't know why. Started looking to see what I could see. Obviously, my son's not there.
How long were you there?
Turned around and I was there for a little bit, just enough to talk, to find out what was going on, find out if they had any evidence or if anything, to hear the evidence that was being said. And then I jumped in my truck and started looking for my son.
Immediately?
Within 30 or 45 minutes. I don't like a lot of people around me to begin with. And obviously my son's not there. And I'm under the assumption that he just walked out. So I jumped in my truck and started looking.
I mean, I think that's what any parent who'd been sold that story would do after sort of assessing the house, seeing who's there, seeing what's being said. You want to get out there quickly. I read in a research document on the Child Abduction Murder Research website that in 76% of the missing children homicide cases studied, the child was dead within 3 hours of the abduction, and in 88.5% of the cases, the child was dead within 24 hours. So the clock's ticking, and the parent who doesn't know why the child is gone is going to get in their car and they're going to go out there and they're going to be screaming out that kid's name.
Driving up and down the roads, screaming for my son.
Did you stay with Chris and Katie there for several nights?
I didn't stay the night, if that's what you're asking. Hell no.
Oh, okay, so you guys didn't sleep. Well, because I had heard rumors that you and your family stayed there, and I was going to ask you about some.
No, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They told us not to search. All right, they told us not to be getting out and walking through the forest and shit like that, looking for Sebastian. They didn't want one of us to go missing while we're looking for our son. Understand that. I did my searching out of the vehicle, driving around, hollering for my son, going up and down every road, looking as far as I can see, screaming for his name. Almost went and bought a bullhorn.
I got a couple around here. I can send you one. You might have to buy the batteries. You know, I wear them out, but I got an extra.
I think it's a little too late. I don't think he's, in the area.
That's so sad to hear him say, I think it's a little too late. I don't think he's in the area. And I wonder also if he meant, I don't think he can hear me anymore.
What was Katie's demeanor like that morning when you got there?
It's really kind of hard to explain. But
was she acting normal?
In my face, had a picture going, see, we're at BJ's yesterday and everything was fine. And I'm like, trying to prove something to me. That's not how you.
Odd statement.
It's not how you prove something to me. On top of that, that picture wasn't taken BJ's. It was taken at Costco, and it's like you're already throwing false information in my face.
Do you think they actually went to BJ's or no?
I have no idea.
I was just asking. That wasn't on my list, but you were saying that, and that does sound like a really odd statement. Convincing language, so to speak.
Doesn't work on me.
Yeah.
I get plenty of liars at work. You know.
I bet you're almost like a human lie detector.
Well, I look at them and I call inmates on their bullshit. You know, it's like, don't try to bullshit me. It's not gonna get you anywhere. You know, be as honest as you can with me. I'll be as honest as I can with you. You know, it's a respect factor, mutual respect.
Do you think she was bullshitting you?
Yeah.
That morning. What?
Yeah.
So right from the start, Katie was acting strange with Seth, and he did feel that she was BSing him. And I gotta say, guys, now that I know that Chris was asked about the marks on his arm, and he told Smiley of Smiley Stories World that when he came home after being alerted that Sebastian was missing, he was roughhousing with the two dogs. And that's how he got those marks up there on his arm. Those don't look like scratches to me. I think they do look like bite marks. You know, when you get all these weird details and all these weird things going on and weird things being said and red marks on somebody's arm, a person who wanted to get Sebastian out of his home, you have to wonder, what the heck was going on. Any person with half a brain is gonna question this shit. Frankly, I'm tired of seeing Duper's delight in certain people's eyes, and I'm starting to get mad.
That's why she doesn't like my opinion. That's why when I told Chris I needed to speak to Katie, well, you can't do that unless I'm there. Karen, you can be there too, buddy.
Wow. What was she wearing?
I don't remember. She was dressed. I mean, obviously, there was people in the house, so.
Right. But I just didn't know if she was in her pajamas or she was dressed.
So Betty, if the sale is that you were told not to look and you were told to stay home in case your child came home, then we could buy that if they actually stayed home, correct?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, if law enforcement told everybody, the parents, I mean, to stay home, why did Chris and Katie quickly move in the RV and drive to Memphis, I believe? That has never felt right. It's never sat right with me.
What was the weather like there? Was it raining or snowing that day? Was it cold? Like, can you...
First day was pretty decent. I mean, I think that low the first night was 50. The next night, it got colder, and then I think on the third night, on Wednesday, I think it was 20 degrees, and then we had rain for the next 3 or 4 days.
Can you imagine your young child being missing, the weather dropping down to 20, and then raining for days? That would be so distressing. I'm telling you, even if that was my cat, I would be out of my mind with worry. I wouldn't be sleeping. I'd be frantic. I'd be out there in the rain screaming out my cat's name. So imagine if it's your child.
But it wasn't crappy weather the day he disappeared.
No.
Did the neighbors speak to you?
Briefly, one of the neighbors spoke to me, lovely lady that lives next door. She introduced herself. I'm horrible with names, but most of the time the people that came over, I was just sitting in a chair. People kind of looked at me, and then they would have their conversations with Chris and Katie and Kathy and whoever else was there.
So, of course, Kathy would be Kathy Bowersox, Chris Proudfoot's mother. I feel that Katie and Chris should have invited Seth into those conversations. Just because it's their house and it's their neighbors, they should have included Seth. They weren't worried that he was going to hear something that they don't want him to hear. Not only is it rude, Sebastian's his child. He has a right to hear whatever was being said.
There was some introductions, but I'm not one of those people you just introduce. I was watching their behavior.
Did the neighbors say anything odd? Was their behavior odd, or were they just appeared to be concerned?
Some of them appeared to be concerned. Some of them brought their video footage over for Chris to look at. So Chris got to see all the video footage. I didn't get to see shit.
Don't you think Chris should have called Seth over and say, hey, come here, look at this? Chris wasn't being respectful of Seth. Chris, why didn't you ask Seth to come over when you were looking at that video footage?
That's quite...
Still in the dark.
Was Chris friendly?
After Chris lost his cool, I couldn't stay there after Wednesday.
Lost his cool how? I never heard this.
The GoFundMe my sister set up to help me pay my bills while I look for my son. It was a GoFundMe that my sister set up for me to pay my bills while I look for my son. It wasn't set up as a reward. It wasn't set up as anything else. People want to know what happened to it. It was donated. I used it to pay my bills. I used it to put gas in my truck so I could drive an hour and a half down there, an hour and a half back. People.
You don't have to convince me because I know how expensive.
No, it's just a little annoying. If the GoFundMe had been put up for a reward, yes, it would have been used as a reward. And I still have some of it. Right. And I still won't touch a portion of it because I'm wanting to put it into the reward. But it has to be set up properly, and law enforcement has to literally approve of it.
To me, when I heard Chris was upset about the GoFundMe, I thought it was because his name and Katie's weren't also included on it, and they weren't going to receive any of it. Why else would Chris Proudfoot have a problem with a GoFundMe for a biological father whose son is missing, who doesn't have tons of money probably in the bank, so that he can leave his job and dedicate his time to trying to find his son? You guys and I, if we're honest, we know that we would do the same thing. If our child were missing and people donated funds, we would use those funds to be able to leave our jobs perhaps temporarily, to go out and search. When Aiden Kloon went missing, his mother had to leave her job. She was so distraught, and she was trying to find him as well.
You know, just because people want something done doesn't mean it happens. I'd like my son to be found, and I'm looking for him.
When you were there and you saw Chris and Katie, did you see any injuries on their persons?
I was not paying attention to them.
You say you didn't see any scratches on Chris's arms?
I've seen pictures of the scratches and stuff afterwards.
Did that concern you at all?
Nothing I can do about it now.
It's too bad he didn't ask Chris that day, that first day on that Monday, "Hey, can I see your arms? Can I see your hands? Take your shirt off." Would Chris have done it? Who knows? Maybe he would have. But maybe he would have gotten very offended. Maybe he would have said, "Hey dude, I wasn't even here. There's no reason for me to take my shirt off for you." I think the cops should have had everybody take their shirts off. Yes, including Katie. I mean, they did that to Wendy Adelson after her ex-husband, Dan Markell, was attacked in his garage and later died. That's what the investigators are supposed to do. But of course they might say, well, it's just a missing child at this point. We have no reason to suspect foul play, so we don't have a right to ask them.
Did you find any behaviors when Chris and Katie got together and the reason why they were the last person to see your son? You know, I'm not trying to, I don't want to put you in a...
Their conversations are inappropriate for what was going on.
How do you mean?
Talking about the next vacation, the jewelry that, they're going to buy for that is Kathy wants jewelry and wants Christopher to buy it for her. I mean, the conversations were enough to make me sick, so I left to go try to find my son.
What was your opinion of Kathy?
My opinion of her?
Yeah.
Really going to piss off Chris if I sit there and tell you my opinion of her.
Have you met her before?
Yes, she was actually supposed to be helping me find a place to live. She's a realtor, has plenty of access to plenty of places.
She knows law enforcement. They have connections. Do you know if Chris has family that works for Sumner County Sheriff?
I've heard that he does.
And do you know that his mom has a friend by the name of Ginger, which is, I guess, a Henderson chief or some kind of lieutenant or something, Henderson Police Department?
I have no idea. I just know Chris grew up in this area. They've been here for a long time. And unfortunately, I'm classified as an outsider.
Not a good place to be in a situation like this. The outsider, when the people that were last with Sebastian have connections in the area, and Chris Proudfoot grew up there. And I've heard Chris Proudfoot talk about how important it is to have connections, that it can make all the difference in life.
My son lived there. He went missing in Sumner County. People may not like me as an outsider. My son. People are going to have to get over certain things. Because I'm not willing to be over my son just poof, as Chris says. Or Houdini himself out.
Personally, I get the feeling that Chris and Katie want everybody to stop asking questions and they just want to be left alone for all of this to go away. But Seth is obviously not going to let that happen. I guess I should say I hope he doesn't let that happen.
What was Kathy's demeanor like that morning? Did anybody in the house, when you saw them, appear nervous or out of place or odd or just... Maybe they weren't doing anything, but there was just something in you that made you feel out of place or made you feel odd.
Katie seemed to be the only one that was upset, grieving, and maybe would be the word.
How was she acting? What emotions was she displaying?
Just sitting on the couch crying.
So that's very telling. She was sitting on the couch crying. So Katie was upset. Chris Proudfoot doesn't sound like he was upset. Kathy Bowersox doesn't sound very emotionally invested in her step-grandson going missing. She's talking about jewelry that she wants Chris to buy her. What's that about? And that is very insensitive to have conversations like that in front of a crying mother whose child is missing, and also in front of the father who doesn't have a clue as to what the heck's going on and where his son is. No wonder Seth said that it would piss Chris off if he told him what he really thought about Kathy Bowersox.
Were you there when Chris approached the law enforcement to get the camper, to get permission to go get the camper?
I was not.
But you heard about it?
Oh, I heard about it.
What day did he leave? The very next day, or was it a day or two after?
I do not know. I mean, it wasn't Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday while I was there.
Now that's something I hadn't heard about, that Chris had to ask permission to go and get the RV. Did you guys hear about that? If you did, what did you hear? Why did Seth say, "Oh, I heard about that"?
When he left?
No,
when he probably went to go get the camper and you probably went on your way. Did law enforcement give you an update? That was really early on in the case, obviously much different than where we were. After Wednesday, my parents showed up from Texas and they were staying over in Goodlettsville at the RV park. I told them where I was at and they knew where I was at. And except for me calling them to find out what was going on, really didn't have much communication with them. I was kicked out of the command center. What was that about? I shouldn't be here looking at the computers. I was looking at the too. You know, my son's missing. I want to see where you're searching. Why? So I can go search. I gotta stay in my vehicle. I can't get out and go running around. But I can sure drive around. I can look. I was told that I'm not supposed to be doing that.
So I think when he was talking about the RV park, I think he was talking about Katie and Chris Proudfoot being over there, not his parents. And I think if you're an outsider and the Sumner County Sheriff is telling you not to search and not to look at the computers, and you know that Chris Proudfoot and his family have connections, that would be very disconcerting. And you might feel like you're being shut out. You know, maybe that's why Seth wants Tony Mathis around. Seth is an outsider in the area where Sebastian went missing. He doesn't have connections to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office, so perhaps he needs support. And even if we have questions, if he's comfortable with Tony Mathis, and Mathis isn't taking money from him, and Seth doesn't feel like he's being taken advantage of, if Seth's okay with Mathis trying to raise funds to, fund his search and his searchers, that would be Seth's business, not ours. I'm gonna leave it at that today. That's a lot to take in. I want it to percolate within you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate the time it took me to create this and remove all those pauses, please hit that like button. Please consider a super thanks, and I'll see you next time on Bed Crime Stories. Love you guys.